I was actually about 11 years old when we visited India. And when we were actually in India, I developed jaundice out there through some sort of water infection, we don't know. But at that point in time, the suspicion is that my kidneys stopped developing. So they stayed at about a child's size. As I grew older, they couldn't cope with an adult sized body. So by the time I was about 18, 19, they deteriorated to the point where they just couldn't cope with me anymore and started failing, basically.
It all started in 2006. Just got my children to the age where I could go back to full-time work. Landed a brilliant job just down the road, and everything was going really well. And then all of a sudden I noticed my joints were seizing up and I was getting stiff joints. It got so bad where my whole body locked, so ended up going into hospital, and after about 3 weeks of tests they couldn't find what was wrong with me, and I was diagnosed with lupus. I sort of had this vague, somewhere in the back of my mind, that it can affect your organs. I had these blood tests done, went into clinic, and they found out that I'd got, my kidney function was quite low. So I was told they weren't going to let me out, they were going to keep me in, and within 3 hours of being in clinic, I'd got a line in my neck and I was on a dialysis machine.
When I had my heart attack, I was taken to hospital, and it was a very severe heart attack. And the quality of life after the heart attack was really poor. I used to suffer heart failures. I couldn't walk more than 10 paces. I couldn't talk. It was really, really horrible quality of life. And then my cardiologist suggested that I should be put on a transplant list because my heart had been damaged so much with the episode of heart attack that there was no other way that I could get my quality of life back.
It was about 18 months. Over that period of time, as soon as they told me I actually had kidney failure, I went through a clinic. They taught me about watching my diet, eating less protein, and I was also prepared for kidney failure, if you like. I actually had a fistula put into my arm, and they monitored the deterioration in my kidney function, and they monitored me very, very carefully. But I was educated in terms of diet over that period of time.
It was a real shock to the system. It was suddenly everything I knew, my whole world was completely different, my whole lifestyle, everything changed from that minute. For a start, it was a sudden change in diet. Certain foods were just no, they were poison to my body. You had to watch what you ate for calcium, potassium, phosphates. There was only certain foods you could eat, and fluid intake. My fluid intake was suddenly dropped from drinking whenever I wanted a drink to 500 mils a day.
Dialysis was very difficult for me. I didn't cope well at all. I wasn't very well anyway by the time I got into dialysis, but I was on dialysis for about 18 months, and over that period of time, I was on the tiniest kidneys you could possibly get. They use them for children, basically, and I was, an adult, if you like. I didn't cope well. I had blood pressure drops on dialysis. I lost a lot of weight. I went from about 55, 56 kilos to about 46, 47 kilos. So I was skin and bone by the time I got to, 18 months into dialysis. I was not very well at all.
The dialysis itself was time consuming. Suddenly I was having to spend 4 hours on the machine 3 times a week. So I was spending more time in hospital than I was with my family. I've got 2 young children, I've got a husband, and it was just like my family had been ripped apart, for them as well. Suddenly mum wasn't there. I was having to go out to dialyse 4:30 every evening. I'd get picked up by transport. I'd be on the machine, and about 6 o'clock, 6:30, I wouldn't get home till 11. So my children would come home from school, and they wouldn't see me till the morning, when I'd just give them a quick kiss and breakfast time, and they'd go off to school, and then again, and it was like that 3 times a week.
I was, after being put on a transplant list, I was sent home, and I was told not to go further afield because they could call me any time. I was given a bleeper, and I was one of the very lucky ones that I only waited for 4.5 weeks. A call came in the morning at 4 o'clock that you have half an hour to get ready, ambulance is on its way. So I got up, got ready, called all my immediate family, told them that I'd be going into hospital. I was taken to Cambridge, to Papworth, and once we arrived there, they did all the tests again, whether I was a suitable candidate for the surgery on that day or not. So after doing all the tests, then I was told that the donor heart has been retrieved. It's been checked by a team of consultants whether it's suitable for transplant.
But I was about 18 months in. Like, I got a phone call about 2:30 in the morning. Went downstairs, picked the phone up, was told, yep, come in at 7:30 in the morning. I went back to bed, my brother didn't. We went to the hospital, 7:30 in the morning. Wandered around, did a few tests. Quite a simple process. It was quite a routine thing for them. They were kind of very organised, very, very calming. About 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd had my transplant. And it took about between 8 and 10 days for my transplant to kind of kick in and start to work properly. But I felt fantastic afterwards.
I got the call for a transplant while I was on dialysis, and I had to go to Nottingham, and after what seemed like it was about 8-10 hours of tests, they finally said that the kidney was viable and the transplant was going to go ahead. So it's just a state of shock.
After the surgery, after the transplant, I was there for 4 weeks in hospital. Then 4 weeks they did all the tests, everything. Went through physio because they keep you there even if you are well enough to go home, just to get that psychological thing, there, that you're walking around with somebody else's part in your body. So they prepare you for that. And I was there for 4 weeks, and after 4 weeks I used to go back. First, every week they used to do all the tests, biopsies and everything, check for rejection. Then every fortnight, then it was every month, and now I go every 6 months for my checkups.
And it took me about, I found after about, 6-7 weeks, I was able to get up. Once I felt the wound was healing, and because that was quite scary. I've got this great big scar, and I thought everything was going to pop open. So it was more in my head that I couldn't do things. But the hospital appointments dropped because you had to go 3 times a week to the hospital to be checked at the transplant clinic. So as those appointments dropped, I started to feel a bit more confident that things were working okay.
So far everything is fine, and my quality of life has improved so much after the transplant that I do everything that I used to do before, if not better. I play golf 3 times a week, walk, and everything is fine.
Time. I've got time. I've got time to enjoy life, to enjoy little things, like just being able to go up and do things spontaneously. I can book a holiday and not have to think, well, it has to be on such and such a days, or I've got to organise dialysis at the other end when I get there. I don't have to think when I go on holiday, half of my holiday is going to be used at a hospital on a dialysis machine. So I can do things. I mean, since my transplant, I've become a granny. Now, I might not have seen that. I might not have seen my granddaughter if I hadn't have had a transplant because I was quite ill. So there's so many blessings, so many things. My life's changed so much. I've got choices. I've got time.
Well, it's been nearly 25 years since the transplant. I'd say I have a life. Before the transplant, I didn't actually have a life. I didn't have an expectation of a life, or a normal life, or any sort of future. After transplant, I've got 3 children. I'm married. I've had a career. I've done the sort of things which any normal person would expect to do. And that's what it's actually bought me. It's bought me time to do what you would normally have expected to do, which I hadn't expected to do. And I can honestly say that after this length of time, I look forward to the next 25 years with optimism. You look forward, and it does buy you a lot of optimism, a lot of time.